and welcome to another edition of the Gooner Ramble pod. I'm your host Giles, coming to you on the back of a very demoralising, unfortunate 2-0 defeat at the Bridge of Nightmares. Joining me on the podcast to try and pick me up are Clive. You alright, mate?
Hello, Giles.
Alright, Judd. Hello. Yeah, you sound chipper.
Hello. Don't know if I'll be able to help pick you up though.
And James as well. Alright, James. How you doing, mate? You right?
Been better, mate. Been better.
Yeah, indeed. Alright, let's crack on. No point chatting 10 minutes of bullshit just to get people going. Right, so game today. Pretty strong team went out today. When I saw the team list, couldn't really complain about that. Going into the game, guys, you were happy with the team sheet, were you? Everybody? Was anybody complaining about the lineup that Wenger sent out today?
I'll go first.
Go on.
No, I was going to say I'll go first. Well, it's a predictable one. No complaints. We've got Walker up front now, and maybe slightly edging it on up front with Giroud, but I think it's going to be part of a rotation. And when you saw who was left out at Zagreb, it seemed pretty obvious that obviously Ramsey will come back in, Diop would be on the bench, and Giroud would be on the bench. So it sort of like picked itself really. So there's no complaints. Mertesacker's not fit enough yet, not quite in shape. So Gabriel played, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So yeah, the team was as expected. Everyone predicted it. Every newspaper, every article predicted that team. So we got what we got.
Judd, do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought the same thing. You know, based on the midweek, you know, it was kind of foregone conclusion who would be starting tonight. So yeah, no surprises for me.
James, when you saw that they dropped Terry and brought in Zuma, were you sure? Did it kind of alert you to the fact that they were probably quite not scared, but very aware of the pace that we'd put in our team today? Was you hopeful that we'd expose some of the frailties at the back?
Yeah, and I don't think it was a great surprise that Terry got dropped either, to be honest with you, considering Mourinho was fairly adamant against Man City that John Terry can be vulnerable to pace. So the fact Zuma played today wasn't a great shock. And in the first 20 minutes or so, I think Walcott got in behind them 2 or 3 times, which is quite unusual for a Chelsea team. And I think clearly Wenger's approach to the game was to get in behind them with pace, and it was paying dividends in the first 20 minutes or so at least anyway. We
certainly looked solid, didn't we, guys? I mean, okay, we didn't really get that many shots off in the first 20 minutes, but we had a lot of the ball. We looked solid. Chelsea had a few chances, but it was even Stevens, wasn't it, Clive?
Yeah, it was, and it was you know what? This was a real game of football, a proper game of football for the period of 11v11. There was no one in real control. Chelsea might have edged it slightly, where we had a period where we had 2 or 3 efforts to clear the ball, and they got second effort momentum on our goal. We looked threatening on the break. We looked compact. We had quick, tight defenders. Gabriel and Koscielny were handling Costa with ease. Fabregas was creeping into the game, so I was looking at Ozil and looking at Ramsey and say, come on, you're in this team to give us control. Get control of the game. So I was looking at that. Ramsey, you've been sitting at home watching EastEnders on Wednesday, so you need to show yourself. That's what I was thinking, right? So I look at the game thinking, for once, we've gone here without an inferiority complex. We've beaten them recently. I was really looking forward to see how this game was going to pan out. But that was obviously taken away from us. So.
Yeah, Judd, what are your considerations for the first 20 minutes?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I thought we were the better side, honestly. I mean, it even got to a point where, we had so much possession of the ball and Chelsea was sitting deep enough that, we weren't really able to capitalize on Walcott's speed getting in behind the defense because they weren't playing up very far. Like it was already said, it was disappointing that we didn't really create a whole lot out of it, but I figured if things were to carry on like that, we'd probably be able to get out of there with a 1-0, because Chelsea wasn't creating anything early on at all.
Okay, so the key incident, really the game changer. Down where we were, James, you were upper tier, I was lower tier, weren't we? Yeah. I couldn't really see too well what was going on at the other end, so maybe Judd and Clive could sort of describe what happened. But at the time, I just saw a melee and then they walk away, and then I see Costa and Gabriel, and then I think I see Gabriel flick him, and then there's a red card, and we're all in shock. I mean, I don't know how you saw it, James, but because you might have had a better angle than me where you were. But did you see the incident where prior to the sending off, where I think Costa basically GBH on Koscielny? Did you see that incident?
Yeah, I was sat in the upper tier, right in the back row, and we could see it fairly clearly in terms of the first incident anyway, and it was clear. Yeah, Costa had an initial nibble at Koscielny, and then had another slap at him, and then when Koscielny squared up to him, he put him to the floor again. And beyond that, it was, like you say, it was a bit of a melee, and it was quite difficult to tell. But subsequent to the game, I've seen images of what happened with Gabriel as well, and there's a few. I think the Daily Telegraph put up some photos that I think they named it 7 photos the FA need to see, and one of them's a photo of the back of Gabriel's neck, and he's got red scratch marks down the back of it from where Costa grabbed him.
And also, I think there's a picture I saw with Zuma actually grabbing Gabriel's neck as well in the melee.
Yeah.
So there's lots of little incidents there that the officials don't seem to have picked up. I mean, when I came back from the game, I was debating with a lot of Gooners, about Gabriel really letting the side down. But if you think about it, I mean, the images that we've now seen, surely Costa should have been sent off. And then the Gabriel red card's a non-issue. Judd, can you talk us through what you saw on TV?
Yeah, I mean, I think James got it pretty accurate. There was a coming together, and then when they came up, Costa, chest to chest with Koscielny. For me, if you're gonna give a straight red for a little heel flick into a guy's shin or a toe stamp or whatever it wound up being, I don't know exactly. But if that's a straight red, then how is the chest to chest not a straight red? Gabriel taking a swipe should have been a straight red. Costa taking a swipe, taking a rake down the back of Gabriel's neck, that should have been a straight red. I mean, just the inconsistency, and that's always been an issue with refereeing for the past several years. People have taken exception with, just the lack of consistency with the calls. And just right there in like a 30-second window, the lack of consistency on all those calls is just mind-boggling. I can understand, Gabriel getting a second yellow, and it was certainly stupid for him to react after everything that had just taken place. He was lucky to just get a warning for the initial coming together. But, I mean, the whole situation, the way that it played out, I really feel as though the biggest difference was the fact that the Chelsea players immediately turned to the referee and tried to influence him. When Gabriel had his little kick out, Costa didn't even react to getting kicked. His first reaction was to immediately turn to Mike Dean and start trying to, influence him to give him a card. That was his first reaction. It wasn't, oh, I got hit, or, didn't even react to that. You watch the replay, his first instinct is to immediately turn to the ref. It's sad, really. It's pathetic. It's childish. And, I didn't like the way the game was played in the 90s, but at least then they actually let people play football instead of having things like this decide the match. It's just disappointing.
Clive, I want you to come in. There's basically 3 elements to this. You've got obviously the sending off. You've got Costa precursor, the preemptive, whatever you want to call it, premeditated murder, and then you've got the officials. Talk me through how you saw all those 3 incidents.
Well, the incidents have been described, right? But for me, we're on this podcast right now, and some of us blog, we do live videos. We like football. Given, we all love the game, right? So we're watching a game that was really shaping up to be something fantastic, right? So you got 42,000 people playing £2.5 million live in the stadium to watch a game of football. And what Mike Dean allowed to happen was he allowed cheating, basically, to win the game. So what you do then, you do a disservice to the game of football. So you have 2 serious elite football clubs trying to beat each other. And we never saw the game we should have seen. So we're robbed as a public of watching a really good game. So I'm not going to judge the team today. I'll look for trends later on. I'm not going to judge the team. I'm just really disappointed that an experienced referee like Mike Dean has allowed the two-card trick, right, the old retaliation trick, to dominate the day. Those type of referees should not be managing big-time football, because that referee belongs in 20 years ago, right? So this is a really important game for both clubs, and I just felt it was ruined. I'm not going to blame Gabriel, because James is dead right. There was a scratch around his neck that was violent, and he should have gone twice. There's a stat out there today that Costa did not make one foul in the game. So you guys went to the game, and now I've told you that he did not make one foul in the game.
I find it unbelievable.
Yet he was the one that absolutely changed the game. So what are we watching here? What everyone else can see, the guy should have been sent off twice, yet he's had no fouls against him. I'm not going to criticise Gabriel or Cazorla. It's the referee should have handled the situation. And one thing that Howard Webb said on TV was as the initial incident happened, he's given out the yellow cards to calm the situation down. Now, refs do that, right? He calms the players down. He sends a message to the crowd to say, I'm in control, right? But as they walked up the pitch, he was not in position to get between two players. And he allowed them to get close together. Now, you could say the captain should do that, but I thought it was a great point. And Howard Webb sort of said he needs to be better positioned there to watch that situation and stop it before he starts. It's his responsibility to manage the game, to manage the spectacle, to manage the occasion, and he chose not to. So we can talk about the team, the approach, and we will get to that, no doubt. But the referee has a huge responsibility, and in my opinion, he ruined the game of football.
James, I'll bring you in. Everyone's sort of talked about accountability, referee accountability, his performance. Garth Crooks earlier on today, I saw a comment of him saying that he wanted to make the game about himself. It was poor. It was substandard poor doesn't even begin to actually reflect the standard of his game. Do you think that refereeing should be transparent? We're not seeing it. We're seeing a very poor standard of refereeing, which is being reflected in that game. And the FA and the Professional Referees Association, or whoever, is it Mike Dean? No, sorry, Graham Polar, whoever's in charge, is it Gallagher, whatever, have to do something about that, because week in, week out, we're seeing poor officialdom. We're seeing, as Wenger said, Costa doing this week in, week out. He'll do it again next week and he'll get away with it. Clive has just said that he didn't commit an actual tackle. How do you see the state of the refereeing affairs?
Well, you're mentioning about who's the head of the referees. It's Mike Dean, actually.
There you go.
I think there's a few strands to this. I mean, firstly, he should have done, if he'd done his job in the first place to send Costa off for what happened with Koscielny, the Gabriel incident would have happened. He was right to send Gabriel off for what he did. He kicked out at him, and it's a straight red card. But I think the guys touched on it as well in terms of inconsistency. There were so many incidents where, for instance, I think Fabregas pulled back one of our players, just a straight tug the shirt to stop him going past him. It's a yellow card every day of the week. The referee plays advantage and doesn't pull it back, and it was so frustrating. So clearly, I think the standard of officiating has deteriorated incrementally over the last 10 years or so. But surely we're getting to the stage now where we need to start helping referees as the game gets quicker as well. And offer them, we've got a fourth official there. I've got no idea what he does. I'm not a fan of rugby in the slightest, but I don't think it would harm the game to be able to give referees the opportunity to review incidents through a fourth official on video and actually help them make the right decisions. Because something like what happened today, it totally ruined the spectacle. It ruined the game. It was unfair. It essentially rewarded cheating. And it would be such a simple transition to include video technology to actually assist with these big calls, which they keep getting wrong.
Especially in a game like in a moment like that, where some people say, "Oh, you bring in video technology, it disturbs the flow of the game," but the game had stopped. There was a break in the play, wasn't there? So there's no reason why Michael Over, I think it was Michael Over, I could be wrong, I think it was Michael Over, could have looked at the video screen and then communicated with the ref and said, "Look, blah 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 blah." So it is time. I think it's 250 grand to install such equipment or whatever in the ground. The Premier League's awash with money.
Well, one thing, to add to that is the decision for the red card was made after Mike Dean was talking on the headset to the linesman.
Yeah.
So what would be the difference to have him talk to the fourth official who's looking at a monitor? He's already stopped the game. He's already using technology to discuss with somebody else. What's the difference between using the fourth official and the linesman? Why does it, I don't get it.
James, you want to come back on that? Or?
No, you're totally right. And I think when people say it would disrupt the flow of the game, I think that's a completely boorish, nonsensical argument. It's for the sake of delaying play by 30 seconds. I'd much sooner have that than have to be sat round for a few hours discussing terrible refereeing decisions every week in, week out. And it's not just Arsenal games. It happens across the Premier League every weekend. Bad decisions are constantly made. And whether the referees are inept or not is another matter. But it's such a simple process to help them and stop these decisions being made.
I agree. The game is huge. The game is huge, and there's two key aspects in football that define the outcome, right? So it's sendings offs and goals. If there's a controversial sending off, you should have the opportunity to review it. If there's a controversial goal, you should have the opportunity to review that. All that does is that stops preconceived approaches like Costa today. His sole intention was to get somebody sent off. And that isn't football to me. That isn't football. And I just feel really disappointed that we were robbed of a game. And we need to stop teams that go out with that approach. Chelsea have won the game today, but trust me, the gap is closing. Today, Arsenal had a huge indirect compliment that Chelsea changed their team for us and had to do that type of skullduggery to actually take advantage of us. I'm not sure they were scoring today. They were shooting from outside the box while it's 11v11. They were getting ooze from the crowd. We're in control of that game. They couldn't outpace us at the back. We had just as much technical ability in midfield. And it was a 50-50 game. And they edged it on the psychological experience they have and our naivety. If that's what the game's about, then you know what? We've got a real problem.
Well, sorry, Clive. On that point, you're talking about Chelsea's skullduggery and all the rest of it, which I totally agree. They're an absolute bunch of. Are we allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, go for it. On this occasion, go on.
They're just a bunch of rabid cunts. They really are. But I was talking to my friends.
Well used.
I was talking to my friends about this after in the pub, and clearly Wenger has a way he likes teams to play, and for the last 5 to 10 years since we've been at the Emirates, it's been a very clean team, which is fine by me. But the problem is when we go to a place like Stamford Bridge, where Mourinho will send his teams out with a clear diktat to behave in the way they do, are we not losing a competitive advantage by not almost lowering ourselves to their level?
No, I hear what you're saying, James.
Perhaps that's something, maybe we do need to be more cynical when we go to places like Stamford Bridge. But it's a result of the game.
Sorry, mate. I'd like to see it be a bit more efficient because, for example, we had a beautiful piece of football in the game and it goes across to Ramsey. All he has to do is shoot and he decides to check. We go 1-0 up. That whole game changes. Right? It's a different game of football. I can question that. I don't want to change how we play. Right? So it's an issue, right? Because I always say that one of Wenger's greatest achievements is creating something called the Arsenal way. Right? So the way we play, you can say that in any bar, in any place in the world, everyone knows how Arsenal play. That's a credit to the man. We're also developing a style of losing the Arsenal way. I'll tell you what happens. We start the game off bright, we miss a key chance, and there's a key moment that comes that goes the other way. It's either a sendings off, or we miss a moment, and they score on the first pro. So in big games, we get out of 10 men, or we concede a stupid goal. And then we chase a game and end up conceding the next one. We are getting this identity of losing an Arsenal way. We derail mentally. And that's a real trend. So forget Chelsea. We can all, now I've said that, think back to the other games we've done it in. But, even this week, let's go back to Bayern Munich. Let's go back to Champions League final. We do this all the time. We derail mentally. And that is a trend that's starting to really repeat itself. And that's an issue for me. And beyond what Chelsea have done, we have allowed it to happen up to a point, but it's a shame that we have to even think that we have to go to those lengths to beat them rather than just play football.
Judd, do you want to come in on that, or James, do you want to respond to that?
I agree. I understand what he's saying about the the negative trend that's happening, but at the same time, I think that it's a dimension of the game. The influencing the ref or playing a little bit dirty, if you like, or however you want to put it. That we at times would be useful to be able to employ, and I do believe that today that was clearly part of Chelsea's plan going into it. And then if you listen to the despicable interview by Mourinho afterwards, where he named Costa his man of the match, I highly doubt that there was anything else that he said to him before the game besides go out there and just be a nuisance. I want you just to kick, pull, poke, just prod their defenders and just get under their skin. That was his whole game plan going out, and it worked perfectly for him. And I think if we had somebody that could stand up for themselves a little bit more, or maybe occasionally tried to get in the referee's face to try to coax him into making a decision in our favor, that we could benefit from that, because that's exactly what Chelsea was trying to do today.
You make an interesting point about crowding and trying to influence the referee. I mean, we've all seen how Man United used to influence the referees, and Chelsea are always guilty of doing that. Do you think it's something that
I hate it?
Yeah,
I hate it.
But I mean, as James was saying, do you think it's something that we could, as you say, deploy, we could use in our favour? Because people were saying today to me on Twitter that Gabriel got sent off, but it was good to see someone stand up. As you're saying, stand up for his teammates. We don't do that enough. We don't fight back, fight fire with fire. But I mean, for me, okay, there's one thing fighting, standing up for your teammates and whatnot, but you got to do it intelligently. And I think.
Yes.
There's ways and ways of doing it, and I think Gabriel was wrong about doing it. I also think, I want to ask you guys about this, there's a lack of leadership. All right, Mike Dean wasn't up with the play, but somebody after Czechs had a word with Gabriel, maybe Koscielny could say to Gabriel, look, give it 5 minutes, I'll mark Costa, you go the other side, I'll mark him. Or Santi, who was the captain, says to him, calm the fuck down. Leave it. Yeah, I mean, don't go chasing him up the field. Leave it. No one really seemed to do that, and it goes back to Wednesday as well, when Giroud was having it with the referee and so on and so forth, and Arteta and other guys were there, and no one seems to be able to. Maybe I'm being knee jerk, and maybe I'm being a bit emotional about it. I don't know, but it just seems to me that there's no one there that really knows how to intelligently go about, handling certain situations in the game. I don't know what you guys think about that. I'll start with you, Clive.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Okay, the referee was the referee. Mike Dean is not new to us. We know what he's like. He's like a prancing horse, right? He's the man. He is the man on the day, and we know what he's like. He's not the first time he sent off Arsenal players. In fact, that's the 5th time, right? So, but as a group of players, we've got to look after each other, and there's a way to do it. So what Gabriel did, actually, I was quite pleased to see him step in between what happened to Koscielny. And that guy is going to be a great player for Arsenal, so I'm not going to kill him. But what really disappointed me was as we walked up the pitch, there was opportunity for someone else to say, just stay away from him for 5 minutes, like you say. Let's swap sides. Let's just separate. Because Costa can't run past Gabriel. He can't out-jump him in the air. He's got a real problem with him. He's not Mertesacker. Now, physically, he can match him. The only way he can beat him is to beat him in his head. And he's only 24, 25, and he's new to the Premiership, and he's learned something today. But as a team, we're not young. Our captain's there, 29, 30. We've got players around that need to step up and really recognise how important days like today are. Because we keep losing too many of them. This is today, we could have absolutely killed Chelsea, put them to bed, right? So, and again, we didn't go into it with the same intent, and in my opinion, we went into the game to play well. But we had an opportunity to kill them. And we didn't take it. We allowed ourselves to be derailed.
Sorry, James, do you want to come back to that, or are you...
Yeah. Well, in terms of the question over leadership on the field, firstly, we were missing Mertesacker today, who I think is fairly well established in the dressing room and on the pitch. We're also missing Arteta. I don't necessarily agree that there was, no efforts were made to talk to Gabriel. I think he was surrounded by 3 or 4 of our players after the initial melee, where people were telling him to calm down. So I think he has to take a degree of responsibility for that. And on a wider note, I think it's been said for a long time that people often say there's not enough leaders at Arsenal, and I find that quite difficult to stomach insofar as it's such an intangible thing for us as spectators, because really we haven't got the faintest idea of the impact certain players have on others, or what's said between them. We just don't know. So I think to be honest, I think saying there's a lack of leadership can be a slightly lazy accusation sometimes of Arsenal.
So what would you put it down to then? I mean,
well, what in terms of what happened to Gabriel?
Yeah, Gabriel and then Giroud last Wednesday. Do you think it's just basically a heads gone moment? It can happen to anybody, and
Yeah, I think there's a degree of context there. I mean, with regard to Giroud and what happened, I think clearly he's a fairly mentally fragile player at the best of times, and he's a fair deal of pressure at the moment in terms of what's happening to him for the national team, and it obviously got to him, and it was just slightly daft. Today, like Clive said, Gabriel's a fairly young player, and he got wound up, and the frustrating thing is what Costa did, that's exactly what he wanted, and he won, essentially. He'll have targeted Gabriel, because I think Gabriel has got a reputation for being a bit of a hothead, which can be great, and I do think he's going to be a very good player for us. So he tends to look impressive whenever he starts games for us. But really, I don't think you can blame a lack of leadership within the squad for Gabriel reacting the way he did. Sometimes people lose their rag, and it's a young guy, and that's what happened.
All right, let's move on. Mourinho's interview post game, he said, what Costa did was part of the game, what the game required. It's what people pay or TV channels pay millions of pounds to watch this Premier League. He did what he did, and that's the way we have to play. He basically was applauding Diego Costa's antics. I suppose as the home manager, as his player, you're going to defend him. So you can't really see anything wrong with that in terms of, as a neutral, but you shouldn't really be applauding that kind of. I mean, you're basically condoning that kind of, as we've already said, skullduggery. Garth Crooks has come on and said what he said. Wenger came on and he said, that basically he's expecting the FA to look at Costa's antics and take action. Do you think Mourinho's a cancer on English football?
Not just English football, world football. I mean, let's think, honestly, that's not what people tune into the game for. They don't want to see that. I mean, come on. I understand that he is just trying to defend his player, and he's trying to make it, make light of the situation, shine a more positive light on Costa after that. But, I mean, listen to any pundit, listen to any neutral. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody's on Costa's side. Let's get real.
Oh, then, you know what? There is I agree with your sentiment, absolutely. I mean, I love the game, right? But football is the world's soap opera. That's what it's turned into. So you should have seen the relish by which BT Sport were covering that sending off. You'd have thought all their criticisms had come together. They couldn't wait to get all the angles. Forget the football was being played. Forget there were two top-class teams on the pitch. It was all about the moment. And TV spend a lot of money on football, and they want these moments. And although we want to watch the game, I sometimes think the moments sell the game. And they should be criticising the referee, criticising the footballer that caused the incident, that robbed them of the game, robbed their public of the game. But they weren't. They were relishing in it. And there is a big part of football media that want to see that. And it's a real shame to me. And I think it threatens the fabric of the game of football. I really do.
James, you wanted to come in, didn't you, and say something?
Yeah, I've since reconsidered what I was going to say about Mourinho and cancer. So, but no, I kind of get the point about football's a spectacle and the rest of it. But I paid the thick end of 55, 60 quid to go to the game today, and
yeah.
I don't pay to watch people acting like a complete cunt. I'd rather watch a good game of football. And to be honest, I try and ignore most of what Jose Mourinho says anyway. He's a wind-up merchant at the best of times, and I don't think he deserves any discussion, to be honest.
All right, cool. Right, so going on, we're down to 10 men. There's a problem with Coquelin. We don't know what it is. He's been subbed off at half time. We think, is it tactical? Is it injury? Everyone's checking the social media. Apparently it's an injury. It's come to light that he's going to be out of the Tottenham game on Wednesday. How big of a miss is he going to be, Gabe? I mean, hopefully it's only one game because we've got to go out to Leicester. Leicester are on a bloody great run at the moment. But how big of a miss is a player like Coquelin going to be to our midfield, our team dynamic? Let's start with you, James, and I'll go to the others.
Massively controversial. Generally speaking, I'd say not much of a loss. I'm not Coquelin's biggest fan. And I mean, there's a few reasons for that. Clearly, he's come into the team and he did well in the last 6 to 9 months. But I do feel with him, there's a slight novelty factor and a bit of the Scotty Parkers about him. Insofar as I think Arsenal fans have been craving a defensively minded midfielder for so long. As soon as one came along who was all action and flying in tackles and the rest of it, we thought, oh, this is brilliant. But then, after a little while and the dust settles, you realise the limitations in his game. And there's a few issues with it. One is that most top clubs who are really successful, win leagues, win Champions Leagues, they don't have a destroyer in midfield. They first and foremost have a ball player who sits deep. So it's a Xabi Alonso, Sergio Busquets, even a Matic is first and foremost a really good footballer. Coquelin is okay, but I don't think he receives the ball off the back foot anywhere near as well as he should. And the issue with that then becomes that Ramsey, who's probably our best midfielder, can't play with him because his game is running between the lines. It's not to build play and dictate play constantly. So Coquelin has to play with Cazorla, which unbalances our team. I think the issue of Coquelin being out is really contingent on the fitness of Arteta. If Arteta's fit and raring to go, haven't really got any issue with it, but there are question marks over Arteta's ability to play 90 minutes now, and we don't know what his fitness is like. He looked leggy in midweek, so it really depends how Arteta's recovery is going and whether he can last the 90.
I'm going to bring in Judd and then Clive. Judd.
I mean, I can definitely see James's point. I mean, that's kind of like what I would say about Chesney. You know, for the last 3 years, everybody was so excited about him, and you know, I always said it was because we haven't had a goalkeeper in so long that they think this is a goalkeeper. I can see that point with Coquelin, and he definitely doesn't contribute going forward. But I think the bigger issue is, I mean, it's a Carling Cup match. I understand it's Tottenham, but was he really going to play anyway? So I don't want to read too much into it just yet until we get an actual report as to what the injury is. You know, it's initially right after the match. I mean, if he picked up the slightest knock, they were probably going to say, yeah, we'll sit him out and rest him in the midweek. You know, that would have been the way it was for any slight knock. So let's wait and see, get a better picture of what's actually happening. But yeah, I mean, worst case scenario is out for a little bit. We get Arteta in, slightly less effective defensively, more effective going forward. I'm not terribly fussed, but I think that position is one that should have been addressed in the summer anyway. And, you know, it wasn't really strong to begin with.
Clive?
Well, I'm just wondering if I've been locked in a dark room for the last 9 months because, as far as I'm concerned, I was watching Coquelin today, and he was dominating that first period of that game. Absolutely dominating. He dominated it defensively. He dominated it with running into space with the ball, something he doesn't previously always do very well. He received it. He passes it sharp between the lines, nice and quickly and early. He has been the best Arsenal player this calendar year, without a doubt. And I think it'd be a huge miss. What he did, he landed on his leg and he hyperextended his knee. Now that could be a nip on the cartilage. That could be a cartilage operation. That could be a month if it's a little trim on the cartilage. He could have hyperextended it. It could be bad. It could be a rupture of his ligaments. That is a serious moment for us, and we got hope he's going to come back. Right. So, to me, we're not watching the game, and we're not watching If you think we can go through a game and miss without missing him, we haven't watched how Arsenal have been evolving their style in the last few months, because he's been absolutely critical to how we transition on teams, how we stop teams getting pressure on us, how we break teams onto teams when they least expect it, when they've got the ball. His quick passing, quick tackling, early engagement has totally evolved the style of the game, of our game. And I think today, forget the 3 points, we can get them back. If we lose him, we can lose a lot more than 3 points. I'll tell you that. And if we think Mikel Arteta's going to cover the gap, then we've got really short memories about what we saw and how it affected our team on Wednesday night. Well, he's not up to covering the gaps. No way is he up to covering the gaps. And Aaron Ramsey was at home on Wednesday night. Well, what did we see from him today? He was carrying a caravan behind his back. He was not moving well. And everyone keeps talking about him with fond eyes. And I'm watching and I'm looking and I'm waiting. He's not scoring, he's not assisting, he's not tackling, he's not running. Wales don't play in centre midfield, they play him on the right, because they don't trust him technically on the ball. Yet we've got to trust him technically on the ball. We've got to trust him to hold his position. Absolutely no way. And that's why he's not playing in the middle of our midfield. I tell you, if Coquelin gets injured, we are in real trouble. I promise you that.
I just want to say one thing in defense of Arteta, though, is if you think back to the Community Shield when he came on as a substitute, he absolutely dominated that game defensively, too.
And that's what he is, Judd. That's exactly what he is. He's the manager's lieutenant to come on and manage games in the last quarter. That's exactly his role.
If he can sustain that, though, I don't know that it's going to be that big of a miss with Coquelin. I mean, obviously, we'd prefer to have more options than those two, but
we can't predict the future. Right?
Right.
Let's see. But I've laid my opinions really clear, right? So based on what I've been watching this year, and not just today, last week, almost every week, apart from a few minutes against West Ham, that guy has been invaluable and one of the first names on the sheet.
James, you want to respond to that?
Yeah. In terms of short memories, people seem to forget that the closest Arsenal have come to winning the Premier League in the last 2 or 3 years was with Arteta at the base of our midfield with Aaron Ramsey next to him. And since that partnership's been broken up, I'd say Arsenal have been effective in winning games with Coquelin and Cazorla, but we certainly don't dominate them. I think our style of play has been also slightly sacrificed in some ways. And Coquelin, I think defensively, in some games, he's useful. I don't think his positioning is as good as the other kind of elite holding midfielders, but he's fairly inexperienced, and that could come with time. The big issue is how he uses the ball. And I think teams like West Ham suss Coquelin out, because if you rewatch that game, what they did was whenever Coquelin received the ball from the back four, they just sat off because they realised he's not going to hurt us. And I don't think his passing's anywhere near incisive enough, if I'm totally honest. And I also think it's really unfair to write off Arteta, particularly on the basis of Wednesday night's game. That's his first start in probably about 9 months. In addition to that, he was paired with Santi Cazorla, who is probably one of the only players in the Arsenal squad slower than Arteta. And Arteta has never been quick. So 2 years ago, when he was playing with Ramsey, he wasn't a fast player then. But Arteta is most effective when he's got a proper runner with him in midfield, like Ramsey. And Ramsey's most effective when he's got a holding midfielder who can dictate play and allow him to break between the lines. And a big reason I think why Ramsey isn't scoring as many goals is because he's shunted on the right. He's carrying out a far more disciplined role in terms of his defensive work as well than he would have to do if he's playing centrally. So I think it's, again, slightly unfair to lay too much at Ramsey's door as well, because he's been played well out of position at the moment. He's essentially just doing a job for the team. And as it goes, Aaron Ramsey made more tackles today, I think, than anyone else on the pitch, I read. So I don't know why you think he's not tackling.
Right.
Go on, Clive.
No, I didn't realise you were anything to come back. But for me, I hear what you're saying when Flamini came into the team and he started pointing and shouting, and everyone thought, this is great. And then 3-4 weeks later, he blew up, and we haven't seen him really since, right? So we recognise that he doesn't stand in the right place. He gets in between our centre backs. He doesn't engage people properly. But then Coquelin came into the group later in the year. And yes, Arsenal fans crave for a defensive midfielder. Coquelin's a midfielder with defensive attributes. He's not really a stick-on holding midfielder because he goes and engages the game. And I think his style of play has transformed us. Yes, at the cost of Ramsey, without a doubt, because Wenger's looked at the technical security what Cazorla gives us, and he's looked at how we were getting broken on consistently in games and losing games on the counter-attack, and said, I've got to find a way to solve that problem. Right, so how can I solve it? Because Aaron Ramsey's not solving that problem, because his reverse gear is not as quick as his go forward gear. Jack Wilshere's not solving that problem, so he's not going to stay in my middle. So what I'm going to have to do is get the security from Cazorla, technically, and I'm going to need something else. And he's fallen upon, however he's fallen upon it, we can all debate that, but none of us really know, on a combination that has worked, right? So, and to your point, James, about Ramsey and Arteta being, great for a league challenge in the Premiership. Well, that was a few years ago. That's probably 3 years ago. And Arteta's 3 years older, and he's had a lot of injuries since then. I am really concerned, although I really like him, and I don't disrespect how he plays the game. I love how he plays the game. But I'm just concerned that people pick on him. It started with the Everton teams that were picking on him. What teams do is they sit a number 10 on him that's quick, and then they run off him. And he can't deal with it. And he can't rely on Ramsey to keep the distance, because Ramsey he looks to get up in support of the front man. If it doesn't work and it breaks down, Arteta's left alone with men a lot quicker than him, a lot sharper than him. And that's the problem. It's a collective game. It's not about the individuals. Collectively, we are far better with the base we got today. How we challenge for the league is not just based on our two centre midfielders. It's based on many other things. Our strikers, our wide men, our centre halves, our fullbacks. But in centre midfield, they're the best two I've seen for a long time. But I don't think they're right either. I don't think either of them are what I would really like. So yeah, I hear you point up to a point, but I do think to dismiss Coquelin's injury, I think that's in a squad so light as ours, with no one else like him, I don't agree with that at all.
James?
Yeah, I think going back to how you were saying teams used to target Arteta, so your Evertons, etc. I think the one thing to remember from that season, from 2 seasons ago, all of our big defeats, so Anfield away, Everton away, Chelsea away, the common denominator there was that Ramsey didn't play with Arteta. In those games, Arteta was paired with Oxlade-Chamberlain, which I don't think Chamberlain's a central midfielder. He's not efficient enough on the ball. And then at Anfield, he was paired with Wilshere, who is a cracking player, but he's not particularly disciplined. I think Ramsey's an incredibly disciplined player. He's incredibly hard-working, covers more ground than anyone else. Up to that same season, up to the point where he got injured on Boxing Day at West Ham away, he'd made more tackles than any midfielder in all of Europe at that point, as well as his goal-scoring exploits. So I think it's unfair to suggest that he doesn't add that much defensively either, because when he's played centrally, he does. And when he's paired with Arteta, more often than not, it tends to work. Those two haven't lost many games playing together. I totally acknowledge that it was a few years ago and Arteta has suffered injuries, but to me that suggests that's the blueprint that we should be following, having a player of Arteta's ilk and style next to Ramsey. So if we don't build around Ramsey in central midfield, and if he plays another season on the right, I think he might leave us.
I have to say, no, he makes a great point, right? So Arsenal have got a decision to make. Who owns the team, right? So, and that is the point. Who owns the team and how are we going to support that? Because Cazorla can't play with Ramsey. Coquelin can, but it does expose the limitations of his game. So we've got a decision to make because we've got two young 23-year-olds in Wilshere and Ramsey that basically should be the future of the heart of our midfield, but we haven't got the player to play with them.
Do you think we need? Go on. Sorry, Clive. Go on.
No, he makes a great point.
Yeah.
Right? That's absolutely right. I looked, I think we're actually in a massive transition at Arsenal. We're transitioning from a style of 2 years ago with Arteta and Ramsey, and Giroud, and that pushing to the centre forward and bursting past him. We were quite one pace in that period, but we're pushing away from that style into a little bit more of a dribbling style, dribbling out the press, and pressuring teams either high up the pitch or have the ability to play deep and play low in the pitch. So our style is changing, but then we've got to decide who's gonna own the team. I call it. Who's gonna own it? And we've got 2 British 23-year-olds that should be in the centre of our midfield. I wish they could play together, but they can't, right? So they are the future of the group, right? So how are we going to support them? And that player that I know what James is thinking about, I absolutely agree with him. I think I know who that player is, and we should have bought him. That player is not at the club. So we're making do. And we're shuffling Ramsey on the right, and that imbalances us. We've got Aspilicueta that got chewed up in the Community Shield today, overlapping, because we haven't got the balance right. So we're not where we should be, and it shows up against the big teams. We still haven't got it right. We haven't bought the right players to build around the players that should be dictating our future. So on that point, I absolutely agree. But right now, where Arsenal are, Coquelin is really important, and we can decide if Ramsey wants to own this team. But then we haven't got the player to support him, and I don't think Arteta can do it. I wish he could. I wish he was 24. I used to watch him at Glasgow Rangers. Brilliant. I wish he could do it, but my eyes tell me that his legs can't make it.
I think from what I've gathered from you guys, I think we need a hybrid. We need to mould someone like Coquelin and someone like Arteta who can orchestrate from deep and provide that balance. If we could find someone like that, probably some of our answers, some of our prayers are in those answers. Let's move on to listeners' questions. I know, Clive, you put out a tweet earlier on, and you got quite a decent response. You pick out a few of the good ones, and we can try and discuss them.
Right, let me have a look. Now you told me. Let me have a quick look.
I got a couple too.
Go on.
One of the things that we were kind of just talking about, one of the listeners, Zeus Cannon, is at Zeus_Cannon, asked if Ramsey was moved back into the middle, would we see his goals come back?
We just done that. What do you think, James?
Well, I understand the need to have him in there.
James, what do you reckon? Do you think his goal, because he was scoring at a really good rate when he was in the middle a couple of seasons ago, wasn't he? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think
he was a do-it-all midfielder, wasn't he, really?
I'd like to think he would, yeah, because, as I said, when you play on the right wing, your defensive job is far more rigid than the one you do in midfield. In midfield, you tend to follow the play more, but that gives you more opportunity to break and get into the box. Whereas when you play right wing, you're essentially stuck to your fullback, and if you're playing against a fairly offensive one like Aspilicueta, you're going to be pushed back and in playing deep fairly often. And Ramsey's game isn't about building from deep; it's about making runs from deep into space, and I think he's prohibited from doing.
Whilst Clive is still sorting out his question, I've got another question here from.
Can I respond to that?
Okay, go on.
Because actually, again, James makes a good point, right? So really, we're looking at Coquelin and we're saying, what can you do to allow Ramsey to play? But really, it's a player that's stopping Ramsey being who he wants to be. Is it Mesut Ozil? Is it Ozil or Ramsey in that position? Because again, you can see how Wales play Ramsey. They don't play him centre midfield. They play him almost like a second number 10. Him and Bale allowed to go where they like, supporting Robson Kanu. They're not having him deep in midfield dictating the play. They're playing to his strengths, which is marathon running. They're saying, you go where you like, run where you like. Now, Arsenal need a base, right? So we need a base, either technical or physical. And if he's not there, we're exposed. So that's why Wenger puts him on the right. He puts him higher up. But he's not expecting him to stay there. Before we come on the pod, I was watching Kevin De Bruyne. Very similar player to Ramsey. Similar pace, similar good feet. Receives the ball on the back foot, both feet, inside out foot, can dribble, can shoot, can cross, can do the lot. The difference is with Kevin De Bruyne is he's a little bit more efficient at the moment. Now, he started on the right today. He scored from the centre of the pitch, right? So it's up to players. I mean, Germany do it with Gundogan. They play him on the right, but he does a lot of his damage in between the lines in the centre. It's a very intelligent position, and Ramble is really suited to it. And when it works, what he needs to improve upon is his efficiency, his decision-making, and his pass and shot selection in the last third. He has lost some of that, and he has had the chances. He had one today. He chose to check. He could have shot. He had a touch. He could have shot on the second touch. He chose to check. They break away. At the top level of the game, when he was really confident, that's a goal, right? So we have to build back his confidence in the last third because he hasn't scored for a while. And then, because he's a really important player for us, and Arsenal will not be the Arsenal we want him to be until he starts to play. Because when he got injured in that year 2 years ago, he was the best player in the country. So I'm not writing it. I'm not going to write him off. He should be the future of our club. But we have got to transition our style to match him, and then we've got to buy the players to give him the platform he needs. And I don't think they're at the club.
All right, Judd, you got a question from Welsh Gooner 95. What did you say?
Yeah, he asked us the second foul by Cazorla. Is that worthy of a yellow?
James, for you?
Yes.
Clive?
Yeah. Well, so it wouldn't have happened if we were 11v11. But if you look at the two incidents on their own, yeah, it's a.
For me, in the modern game, it is. But I think it's unfortunate that a mistimed tackle by just the slightest fraction of a second can result in being sent off.
Okay, cool. I've got another one from @JNSYRET5, and they ask, whose fault was it that we lost today? Is it the Arsenal players having no discipline, or Mike Dean, a.k.a. Gollum? Judd.
If I had to pick one individual, which I think is what he's trying to get at, I'm always the last person to do this, but I'd have to blame the ref today. He lost control of the game, let Chelsea influence him too much. Had too big of an impact.
Clive.
Yeah, it's like I like basketball, one of my other sports I like to watch, and then when it gets to the playoffs, the referees allow you to win. They allow the players to win the game. I always feel in the big games, let the players win it. Don't let the referee be so decisive. Don't let us talk about it. We should be invisible.
So it's Mike Dean for you, yeah?
Yeah, it's Mike Dean. I don't do summary.
You can say that again. James, to you.
I'll be quick. Yes, Mike Dean. You can't I wouldn't blame anyone associated with the club for the loss today. We were well in the match until that happened. So, yeah, I think he's culpable.
Cool. Clive, question from one of your followers.
Okay, mate. I got one from Evil Genius here, and he says, is Wenger good enough to prepare players mentally and tactically too often we have these losses in big games?
Picked an easy one, huh?
For me today, I don't think there was anything wrong with the preparation. I thought the 11 I was fine with the 11 that he put out on the field. I was fine with how things were going up until the sending off. I think we were well in it. It's just a series of unfortunate incidences, that led to us getting 2-0. I mean, at 1-0, I was looking at something we were defending admirably at 1-0 down in the second half after we let in the Zuma's goal. They weren't really peppering us too much, but once we went down to 9 men, I mean, what are you going to expect? You know what I mean? The deflection goal was unfortunate. For me, maybe you guys might see it differently, but I can't really blame Wenger for the preparation or selection or tactics. I'll let one of you guys answer that.
For me, I don't think there was anything wrong with Arsenal's tactics, but I believe that he was outdone by Mourinho again, because I strongly believe that it was Mourinho's intent to go on there and influence the ref, get him on their side. I really do believe that.
James?
Yes, Wenger is good enough in terms of how he prepares us and all the rest of it. I get very sad when people are mean about Arsene, but I don't think you can put today on him at all. I think last season we won a lot of more games against top four opposition than we had done previously, and that's probably a reflection of the calibre of players we're able to sign. And no, definitely keep going with him.
Cool. Clive, do you want to answer your own question, your own listener's question?
Yeah, I thought, well, I've got other questions here, like saying, can we hire a hitman for Mourinho? I don't really want to do that one. But yeah, it's I'm look. Arsene Wenger's no idiot, right? He's managed for 18, 19 years, 30 years in total. Well, what that guy knows about football, let's not sit here on the podcast and rubbish him because he's top class.
Right.
I would like to. I have moaned about preparation in some games, like the Monaco games, but sometimes we can be a bit lackadaisical. But today I thought we approached it okay. When we've lost it, you think, God, could he have said something else? Could he have done something else to change it? And that's just a frustration of a fan. I thought today we were technically as good as them, if not better. I thought we had defensive control, and I was just so disappointed the game didn't pan out, and we could have really learned something about this group, about the balance of the team, and the gap is really closing with Chelsea, and they know it, right? So it's what we do from here on in, really. It's a shame. It's still September, so life isn't over.
I suppose today, for me, is a case of the referee decided the game. You expect the referee to sort of complement the game and keep it flowing, but he definitely decided the game today. Let's move on quickly to Tottenham Hotspur FC. Wednesday, scratch team for you guys, or is he going to have to go out and try and win the game because it's a local derby, bragging rights, all that comes with playing scum? James?
I think it'll probably be, we'll see similar changes to the ones we saw in midweek. So I imagine the likes of Gibbs will come in. Arteta will probably come in if Coquelin's injured. Clearly it's a game we have to try and win, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the Carling Cup. We've got more pressing issues the following Saturday.
Judd, do you expect to see when Adelaide coming in, maybe Oxmart starting right, like James was saying, maybe some players, some similar sort of line-up to what we saw, or personal to what we saw in midweek?
I don't know how far he's going to go into the reserve squad, but I expect to see many of them out there. I don't, as a fan, I'd like to see it taken more seriously because it is a rivalry, but realistically, I mean, it's the Carling Cup. It's not that important of an award to win. It's never been taken that seriously by Wenger. I expect to see wholesale changes.
Clive, to you, Carling Cup, local North London derby, do we still go out and win the game, even if we don't win the Carling Cup, still go out and win it? Or do we keep an eye on Leicester next week, who we are on a very good run at the moment?
This is the debate, right? So I'm not going to summarise this. I think we have an issue in the club about how we approach a string of tough games. I said it last week, and we don't do it right. So I'm not sure what right is. But, I totally agree. We will play the similar team we played in Zagreb. Maybe one or two differences. Maybe Mertesacker will probably come in. Should be fit enough by then. But is that the right thing for Arsenal? Do we just need to just play our strongest team until they break down and then play the next one? I'm not sure what right is, but the way he does it, when we have a number of close games together, we don't do it very well. We've never done it well historically. But I haven't got the answer. We just don't handle rotation the way John Terry handled rotation today. He's professional. He sits on the bench. He wants to play. At the end of the game, he's as happy as anybody. Right? So we've got to do it better. When we have rotation, we go into games and players start to second-guess the future, where they're going to play. They start to second-guess the manager. I just don't think we handle it the same way, and I'm just not sure what the answer is, but it's a disappointing trend for sure.
Right, well, let's roll on Wednesday and Saturday. Hopefully we get a result on Wednesday just for bragging rights. But I mean, like as James said, I mean, we've got bigger fish to fry. I want to thank everybody for coming on the pod today. Please subscribe to our iTunes, our SoundCloud, YouTube channels. Check out the website, goonerramble.com. I want to thank special guest James from The Grove coming on. Thank you very much for coming on, James. Pleasure having you on, mate.
Pleasure. Likewise.
Great debating. Clive, as always, fantastic debate today, fantastic discussion. So thanks for coming on to you.
Thank you, and James, top stuff, mate. Good work.
And Judd, thank you also for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thanks to all the listeners that sent in questions. A lot of them we covered naturally through our discussion. But thanks for the questions. And
also those that we couldn't cover. I mean, there were quite a few that we got into that we couldn't cover. Hopefully next time. But hopefully you guys will enjoy the discussion, debate today. Make sure you tune in next time for the Gooner Ramble podcast. Thank you and good night.